Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Dr. Ben Schostakowski, and I'm the head of directing and course leader for the directing course here at NIDA. Welcome to NIDA Virtual Open Day. We're very excited to be able to bring you into NIDA at this time and to speak to you more specifically about our directing course. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So I'd like to begin this session by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which NIDA stands. We acknowledge the Bidjigal and Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So, as I said, my name's Ben Schostakowski. I'm the head of the course of directing. I'm speaking to you live right now, actually, from the Luminous studio, which is the studio in the graduate school where the directors actually undertake their training. It's a pretty special place. As you might be able to see clearly, we have a seating bank and lights and AV and equipment. And this is actually the environment where, from the beginning of the course, over the 15 months of the course, the directors experiment, dream up new ideas, and become ready to enter the industry. So this is where it all happens. I wanted to just say a couple of ground rules for the Zoom, if we can, that if we can ask everyone to please keep your microphones on mute and your videos turned off. But later on in the session, there'll certainly be time to answer some questions, and then you can reveal your video and unmute the mic. So I also wanted to begin this session just by talking through the structure of how we'll talk about the course. First of all, for about 10 or 15 minutes, I'll go through some specifics. If you've been through the NIDA website, you might see quite a lot of information there about the subjects themselves and some of the projects, but hopefully this gives you a little bit more detail into those aspects of the course. So I'll speak for around 10 to 15 minutes around the course. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a small Q&A with two directing alumni. And it's going to be a great opportunity for us to speak to them about their experiences inside the MFA directing course here, as well as their transition and careers in the industry. Then finally, what we'll do is we'll move to a Q&A. So that will be your opportunity to talk to either the alumni or myself and ask any questions about the course, anything about the applications. And we're very excited to be able to have that conversation with you. So let's begin the course overview. One of the first questions about this course is exactly who can apply. So the criteria for this course is that you would need at least a graduate course, undergraduate rather, degree. But that undergraduate degree can be in any field. It doesn't necessarily need to be in an arts field. And if you don't have an undergraduate degree, to have at least 5 years relevant experience. So who is it that we're actually looking for in this course? These are a few of the key things that we're really dying to find in the application pool. We're looking for early career artists who have a real driving passion and show us potential for directing compelling live performance. We're looking for artists with diverse voices and perspectives who can authentically lead storytelling to contribute to a more inclusive society. We're looking for dynamic and empathetic collaborators. We're looking for creative and entrepreneurial thinkers. And we're looking for artists who have a desire, a real desire, to make an impact in the future of our national and global arts industry. So I'll talk now about the course in overview and then go into some more specifics. So this course itself has been training directors for nearly 50 years, so it's got a significant history. And we like to think that the impact of the training of this course comes from our studio-based learning. As I mentioned, we work right here in a theatre space for nearly all of our classes when we're not outside collaborating. And we like to also think that this course nurtures each individual inside the course to help them kind of uncover their unique directorial voice before they move into the industry. The course as well is made up of a bunch of real world collaborative projects, which is a very exciting aspect of the course. And in those collaborations, those collaborative projects, we actually span quite a variety of art forms. So you can see in the list here, some of the things that we'll look at are both classical, but also contemporary international theatre around the world. We look at directing for screen, directing for opera, directing live musical performance, devised performance, and event directing. And then at the end of the course, and we'll speak more about this in a moment, you actually then are able to present a graduation production in the style and form that you're most interested in. It becomes bespoke. Throughout the training as well, your projects are developed and mentored alongside leading Australian and international industry guests. Some of the nuts and bolts of the course here. So it is 15 months full-time, the MFA directing course. It starts around early February and goes right throughout the year, and you finish up around March of the following year. The course, we operate full-time. So our working hours are usually around 9 till 6 during the day. And then when you have productions on, of course, there are rehearsals, and we work on site here at NIDA. So throughout the course, one of the exciting aspects is that you get the opportunity to engage with all of the other departments here within the school as well. So you'll be engaging with the actors, with designers. We do a lot of work with the designers in developing ideas and productions. You'll also be meeting with production companies and industry guests, and we'll be attending, where we can, festivals, so we can engage with both national and international work to get a real insight into what's happening in our arts community and be able to contribute in our own way moving forward. So I mentioned some of the trips there, the field trips, which we can speak about in more detail. But some of the field trips we've taken before, we've visited festivals in Adelaide, in Perth Festival. The international field trip in previous years was actually to an incredible theatre festival in Berlin called Theatertreffen, which is a meeting of some of the most exceptional theatre works from that area, and a real kind of specific cultural version of theatre that's quite alive and quite exciting. That's one of the specific aspects of international theatre that we look at, one of many. Another trip that we do as well is to NAISDA Dance College, which is in Gosford, here in New South Wales, and that's to collaborate with the students there on a devised project. So what I wouldn't mind doing now is, as I said, there is some information on site on our directing website, which talks through the real details of each subject, but I'll just kind of paraphrase or summarize the key ideas that are in each of our key subjects. So first of all, we have directing techniques. Now, this subject is, of course, really, really important for our course. Inside this subject, this is where we teach a very comprehensive directing methodology. And that methodology spans from the selection of a text to analyzing that text, so you have an understanding of it, figuring out how you're going to structure a rehearsal process, to run that rehearsal process in a day-to-day way, to take your production into a rehearsal space, and then importantly into a production space, to take that show, to have it ready for performance, to take it through open dress rehearsals, and then finally opening night. So the methodology is completely comprehensive about the entire process, and that's embedded within directing techniques. The other aspect of directing techniques that we specialize in is communication skills, where we speak and we do tailored workshop sessions with each of our students in order to enhance their own unique approach to communication. And the other aspect, a very important aspect, is of course leadership skills, that the director within a rehearsal room is often leading that process, and that their approach to leadership needs to be considered. And it's something that you can rehearse and experiment with and become really, really more confident when you walk into a rehearsal room with. So the next subject we've got there is directing practice. So directing practice holds all of the collaborative projects that you'll do within the course. This is where you actually get your hands dirty and do the directing projects, which everyone gets very excited about. So within that subject, we do around 5 major collaborations, and those collaborations become assessments as well. And I'll go through those projects in just a moment. The most significant of those projects, of course, would be your graduation production, which happens towards the end of the course around December. Then we have dramaturgy, which is well, it is mostly theoretical, but it also moves into practical realms as well. So dramaturgy, we begin by gaining a kind of comprehensive vocabulary for being able to talk about text, all different styles of performance text, and be able to analyze it in order to prepare your rehearsals. We also then move into what you might call literary dramaturgy, where we start to talk to companies, actually theatre companies, who professionally develop new work. So in the course at the moment, we work with Polly Rowe, who is the literary manager at Sydney Theatre Company. And she does a few sessions where we talk through examples of new writing and how you might work with a new writer to develop a new script. And then finally, as you're moving towards your graduation show, we focus more specifically on what we might call production dramaturgy, which is the idea that you're inside a rehearsal process as rehearsals are unfolding and helping shape the work and the ideas and theories you might use when you're doing that process. The contemporary director is a very important subject, like all of them, which focuses on case studies of international directors from around the world, from different cultures and different art forms. And it looks specifically at those directors that we, in the case study, their particular worldview about directing. It also analyzes quite deeply what their approach to creating theatre is and their approach to directing actors as much as possible. And slowly but surely throughout the course, we start to get a real sense of what's happening in the zeitgeist of contemporary theatre direction in the world and what it might be in the future, actually. And those influences become very much a part of what you may choose to be inspired by as you move into your graduation production. So some of the directors we've looked at in the past, for example, would be people like Ong Keng Sen, who's a famous theatre director from Singapore who visited NIDA and the directors not long ago, Eva Van Hove, live cinema directors like Katie Mitchell. There's a real broad range of really interesting artists that we look at in those sessions. Finally, scenography. Now, this is a really unique subject for the directing course in that it teaches a lot about art theory and approaches to design and how you might develop a design with a designer so that you as a director have a little bit more of a clear process about how you might go about that. This particular subject we carry out quite closely with the design course. And we do initially a couple of hypothetical productions where you might develop a model box for a Shakespeare, for example, or later in the year, an opera, and present a kind of major model box presentation, which you might do once you move into the industry for an actual production. They're the hypothetical aspects, but the practical aspects of scenography are actually developing the projects that you'll direct, which are your Triple J music video clip, for example, as well as the eventual design for your graduation show. So that gives it a little bit more of a summary of our key subjects. So moving ahead, these are the projects that we have done in the past in the directing course, and some of them have been ongoing for quite some time. And they're quite exciting in that they're particularly diverse in both the collaborators that we work with and the art forms that you're learning to direct. So as I mentioned before, in directing techniques, you get a comprehensive methodology for the course to begin. And the way that we teach that is inside this theatre, each of the directing students actually take turns directing one another as actors in scene work in order to have an iterative approach to gaining competency in that methodology. So you're in this room, you will have your own script, you'll direct your fellow directing colleagues to stage a scene in both exploration and improvisation, but then also staging it and getting it into a more fully finished result. And you'll do that in 2 cycles with 2 different plays. And by the end of that time, every director's been able to test that methodology and see how they can make it work for themselves. And then we move into actual collaborations with actors who aren't inside the course itself. So the next big directing project that we do is a collaboration actually with another acting school here in Sydney, which is the Actors Centre Australia. This collaboration's been going for, I think, nearly over 10 years, and we absolutely love this project. This is where you'll then choose a production of your own choice, and you'll start to work with 3 or 4 actors from the Actors Centre Australia, and over 2 weeks, direct a short 1-act piece of performance. Another project that we do, as I mentioned previously, is a collaboration with NIDA, which is a dance college for First Nations and Torres Strait Islander performers in Gosford here in New South Wales. So the focus of that collaboration is to have a completely collaborative and shared devising experience with those performers. We do a cabaret, which is a very exciting, again, lots of exciting things, projects that we do. That project is with the musical theatre students in the diploma course here at NIDA. And that's also a collaboration with design, where we stage over 2 weeks a brand new cabaret, which is usually inspired by Weimar cabaret era. Triple J Unearthed Music Videos is perhaps the second largest project that sits within this course. And I'll talk in more detail in just a moment on that, but that essentially entails you being paired up with a designer, meeting a new musician that Triple J Unearthed has identified as someone really exciting, and developing and shooting your own video clip. We do, as I mentioned before, an opera model box project, which is a very significant learning process, actually. And we usually get mentorship from artists from Opera Australia about how to read music and libretto and develop a design, a comprehensive design and model box for a major opera. You also do assistant directing here within the course. We usually do that slightly later in the year. Within NIDA, we do play production seasons. And so you would be attached in one of those seasons towards the end of the year and chart an entire process with a professional industry director. Then your graduation production. And of course, the 2 field trips that sit within the course, one which is interstate to an interstate festival, and one which is international, which is either a field trip or a placement. So I'll wrap up in just a moment on the specifics of the course. I wanted to just talk in a little bit more detail about the 2 major projects that sit within this course. The Triple J Unearthed competition with NIDA is something, again, that's been running for more than 10 years. And it's an industry-facing project where you actually get to meet artists who are right at the beginning of a very exciting musical career that Triple J Unearthed has identified as someone who's really, really important to be coming into the industry for their own unique approach to music. You and a director will meet with that musician, and with a relatively small budget, you'll start to develop your own entire music video clip to premiere with one of their songs. So this project at the moment is happening right now in 2020 with the current cohort. And we've just done the final pitches with Triple J and Rage, who continue to mentor the project and give feedback. And the very exciting next step is that they'll soon go into production and we'll shoot them. And then we hold a premiere here at NIDA once everything's been edited and color graded and we think it's schmick and ready to go. And then Rage from ABC also premiere each of these video clips professionally on their channel. So each of the directors before they graduate gets their first television credit with that project. If you haven't already, it's really worth checking out the previous year's clips as well to get a bit of a sense of what people have been able to come up with creatively. And finally, talking about the course, I wanted to give a little bit more insight into the graduation production, which is the most major creative project within the course. Once you come into NIDA and we go through the series of collaborative projects, around the first or second term, we'll start to talk to you about what it is you'd love to direct for your graduation production. And it is a choice of your own. And you'll get mentorship from industry. Each director will be paired with an industry mentor who we think might be really useful to your particular approach to directing and ideas. And you'll slowly begin to develop what it is you want to do with that production. Mostly to begin with a designer about how that world might operate in a design sense, but also you may want to bring in a dramaturg. For example, the master's writing course, often those students end up being dramaturgs for this production. And then you're eventually going to do casting and cast that production. And towards the end of the year, you'll go into a block of rehearsals where you are now very much in the driving seat of creating a brand new theatre piece to showcase before you leave the course. And that particular production is what we call your graduation production. It's also the graduation production for the third year BFA designers, but it sits inside a festival that we call the Festival of Emerging Artists, because the work is directed and delivered by you, the students, just before you move into the industry. So that's a very exciting time of year. It's a very rigorous and complex process, as you can imagine, where we often rehearsing, 6, 7 or 8 productions at one moment. They're all about 40 minutes in length. And then we showcase them in repertory, so one after the other in 3 different venues over a week for a festival. So it's a very lively and exciting time to see all of those productions come to life. They span as well a huge variety of art forms. So we've done dance theatre productions before, circus. We did a chamber opera last year, contemporary theatre. So there's all sorts of kind of really unique directorial approaches that are able to be showcased in that festival. We invite industry to see all of those productions, and that sets you on your way to making your way into the industry. Excuse me. So that's a bit of a wrap up of the course itself in a little more detail. Before we move into the final Q&A with everyone, what I'd love to do now is shift to having a chat with 2 of our alumni. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen and invite Alex Berlage. I think Alex is there. And Imara, if you're here as well. Welcome both.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you going?
Really well, thank you. In my lonely but lit theatre. I'm very excited to be joined and have a chat with you both. I'd love to introduce you both first, if you don't mind, a little bit about your background as graduates of the course and professionals. And then I've got a few questions I wouldn't mind asking you about your experience of the course, but also your experience, in the industry and what you may have taken or left behind even. So I'm sorry, I'm going to do the wonderful and slightly embarrassing moment of reading some of your fantastic bios, but I think it's really important for our audience here to hear about the great work that you do. So Imara Savage, thanks for joining us. So Imara is a theatre and opera director and has directed award-winning productions for Sydney Theatre Company, Belvoir Street, Griffin, STCSA, Sydney Chamber Opera and Griffin Theatre, to name a few. Her productions were Sydney Theatre Company, where she was resident director from 2016 to 18, won multiple awards. And you were nominated, Imara, of course, for a Helpman Award for Best Director for your acclaimed production of St. Joan, which is quite incredible. It'd be good to talk about that in a moment. Thanks for joining us, Imara. And we also have here Alex Berlage. And Alex, as a graduate of the course as well, is both an award-winning director and lighting designer, which is a very unique combination. And Alex has won Sydney Theatre Awards for Best Direction of a Musical for the past 2 years in a row, no less. Most recently for American Psycho, which was a great success at the Hayes. And as a lighting designer as well, alongside his career as a director, Alex has worked with companies like Sydney Theatre Company, Opera Queensland, Sydney Chamber Opera, Sydney Dance Company, Hayes Theatre Co, and the list kind of goes on and on and on. So we're very excited to have both of you here. How are you both, by the way? Let's just start with that.
I'm good. I've got a bit of a cold, so I have to go and get a COVID test after this. Hopefully, all things.
Fingers crossed it goes okay. I hope you're feeling all right. I'm sure it will.
No, I'm good.
Well, I also hear that you have to have the COVID test before you can see a doctor now. So it sounds like you're going in the right process at the moment. And how are you, Alex?
Yeah, being good. What a strange time. It's yeah, it's been a nice amongst all the turmoil that we find ourselves in. It's been a nice chance to just pause and take stock of everything. So yeah, you gotta remain optimistic.
Absolutely. So what I'd love to do is ask a couple of questions, and we can be kind of casual in how we talk about some of these questions and keep it conversational. So what I wanted to ask you both is, when you did your course, of course, at different times, it starts with a kind of comprehensive methodology about how you might approach directing text and working with actors. And that takes, quite a few weeks. So I wanted to ask you both, did that particular kind of comprehensive methodology training continue to stay within your own practice, or what aspects might have you taken away from that particular training? Imara, should we start with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I did a course roughly 10 years ago now, and it was the first year that a Gil Kipster was running the course. So he was just introducing this new methodology, the active analysis. And as a result, we were the kind of guinea pig year, like we were learning the methodology at the same time that it was kind of developing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to answer your question, like, yes, a lot of the methodology, I suppose what it did was it grounded us in something very practical that felt applicable to most of the works that we were looking at in some regard or another, So whether it was just looking at, really basic Stanislavskian stuff like actions and objectives, or the main event, or obstacles, or through lines and arcs, all of that kind of stuff, which I didn't really have a very solid grasp on. And once you start dissecting it in minutiae during scene work, you realize it's quite a complicated thing to unpick.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the stuff that stayed with me. In terms of, do I apply that as like a rigorous methodology? I would say that what I've learned over the past 10 years of kind of practical work in a room is that that work applies to some things, and then you work with some more kind of postmodern pieces of writing, or even lately I've been looking at a lot of kind of feminist text, and it works in very different ways. But I suppose I always in my head kind of use the active analysis as a place in which to start with, whether it's to say this is what I'm using or this is what I'm not using, and subverting it, So I think it gave me a really good basis from which to kind of launch into feeling like I kind of had some version of a process when walking into a room with actors, because a lot of the terms that have come up in Stanislavskian practice are terms that actors are trained in and understand. So I suppose that was useful in having a kind of a common language with actors mainly.
Yeah, I agree. It was great to essentially learn a rule book, and then as soon as you know a rule book, you know what rules you're following and what rules you're rebelling against. And I think kind of like the analogy is like, some of the greatest painters, like those who do cubism, expressionism, all kind of like sort of started kind of from the foundations of sort of like the rule book and the sort of the realism. So once you kind of work out how to sort of do things from a completely three-dimensional, real, conventional perspective, just how far you can go away from that. And there's certain sort of techniques that when you're lost on the floor directing, you can sort of come back to or use. Yeah, it's about knowing kind of where you've about having a sort of a home base to sort of go to and come and propel away from, I suppose.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear both of you talk about it in that way, because I think that's exactly kind of the experience of each year, each cohort who comes through. Of course, once they apply, they usually have their own unique approach already to how they want to direct work. And sometimes that's really instinctual and it's very collaborative and it's just about making the show themselves. And then all of a sudden there are a bunch of tools in front of you that you try and put in place to use. But as you've both indicated, then as you move throughout the course, you can actually then choose the things that work for you and you can keep them. But in fact, you can start to dial up more specifically your own approach. By the end, I guess that's the actual really desired outcome, is that you can leave and say, well, actually, I've developed and I know a bit more about how I like to work myself, and you can talk about it with actors and use it as you move forward, project to project. So another question that I had too is about all of the different projects that sit inside the course, the collaborations where you're working with other artists on different ideas and you get to actually execute ideas as part of the course. And I wondered for both of you, if there was a particular project that was a real highlight for you that you remember from your time in the course, and what that highlight was.
Yeah, for me, I think we had different projects again to some of the projects. We didn't do things like the Triple J stuff, but I think the opera project is still the same. And I really had no experience of opera. I think maybe I'd seen one opera in my life. I saw, when I was a kid, I saw Benjamin Britten's Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was Baz Luhrmann's production. And it was this amazing, incredible, like, flight into magic and color, and I just was like obsessed with it. But I never went to see opera with my family or anything. And so when we did opera, like the scene work in opera that you do as a part of the directing course, and then the opera project where you work with a designer and you design an opera, I really didn't even understand what the medium was. Like, I think then somebody said to me, well, no, basically it's just like the whole thing is sung, like they just sing everything, you know. And that seems really obvious, but if you haven't had exposure to it, it's not obvious, you know. And it felt like it was this thing that I would never be able to do, and I would never be able to understand. And I just loved like working with opera singers on the floor, do you know? And I loved working with. I worked with a designer who I still work with a lot now, actually. You know, you were talking about St. Joan, the piece I did with Sydney Theatre Company, and Dave Fleischer was the designer on that. And we did our opera project together. We were just paired together, you know, to do Così fan tutte back 10 years ago. And yeah, I think it was like an introduction into an art form that I never would have considered. And all of a sudden it's become one of my favorite art forms, you know.
Yeah, wow. And that's very exciting too, Imara, to hear that, you know, colleagues that you meet along the way become your mates and your creative partners that you continue to work with as well, as you move forward. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and what about you, Alex? What was a project that kind of sticks out in your mind as a really, a real highlight for you?
Well, I'd agree. I mean, when I did the course, which was back in 2016, there was, you know, so many projects there, which gave you the opportunity to sort of collaborate with members of the design course. And I remember that being so incredible to just, you know, see a project through all these hypothetical stages of design and completely sort of go, you know, full to town with trying to establish a vision and really dramaturgically interrogate what it could be without, you know, without having to worry about the show ever being put on. And all of those sort of hypothetical exercises were so good because they helped you sort of really discover who you are as an artist and a director, and kind of what you really stood for when you don't have to sort of answer so much to sort of the finance department or the requirements of the producers who want, you know, a two-hander comedy because it will sell. You can really, really sort of interrogate what you want to be and what you want to do and what you have to say. And there was also some, you know, incredible projects like the equivalent of the NASDA project and the where you get to spend a week just working with artists from, you know, different disciplines and sort of collaborating to create something which is inherently not a play but a piece of theatre. And I think that's really exciting, those moments where, you know, it's such a luxury to have a full week to just develop something without ever having to put it in front of an audience. That's such a great sort of gift as an artist, and it's such a hothouse sort of environment to really sort of test those skills and find what your craft is.
Can I ask you both about Berlin? Did you both actually do the trip to see at one point the Theatertreffen Festival?
Yeah, our year did. Did yours? Was it when you were there, Imara?
It wasn't when we were there. No, we went. I think you, Ben, were talking about Adelaide Festival, which we went to. I mean, I went to Theatertreffen last year.
Yeah, that's
just
right.
on my own, and that was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I wish we'd done it back then too. It was an incredible experience. Yeah.
So it was so amazing. We saw like I think it was over 2 weeks. We saw something like, you know, 14 or shows, or I can't remember the exact number, but it was incredible to just be exposed to all these, you know, these different visual aesthetics and directorial ideas and visions. And, you know, it's quite unlike anything you sort of experience in Sydney. And it's amazing, you know, a lot of the productions are in German language, but you know, that's kind of irrelevant to a certain extent, because there is so much to learn about the stagecraft and the manipulation of time and space, and, you know, and design, that yeah, it was such an incredible opportunity to go over there and just sort of like just completely absorb everything like a sponge.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of exactly right, Alex. The point of going, you know, in those trips, what does that actually provide you as a student who's kind of taking on a lot of information about directing work or different writers or different art forms, and what, you know, you can explode or not. And so I wondered as well, Imara, you know, even in your trip to the Adelaide Festival, where I'm sure you saw, you know, some really great work, are there specific memories that you take away from those field trips?
Yeah, I think maybe it's like the first time with the Adelaide Festival that I'd been exposed really to kind of international works of scale. You know, I'd seen like local theatre and stuff, but I'd never really seen work like that. And maybe that much diversity just in, I'm talking about diversity of genre really, just in like a small space of time. And I suppose what that does, it's a bit like, as you said, like at the time, there's so much input that you're not really sure what to do with it. But as you kind of move through the course, and even beyond the course, you reflect back to kind of these seminal moments, you know, where you go, oh yeah, that's right, I saw like the Schauberner's production of, you know, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and it really changed the way I thought about Tennessee Williams. Or even I saw a Chekhov production that all of a sudden it totally changed the way I understood Chekhov. I'd never really seen a production that had a cast of 22 people and that had been in rep for like 9 months, you know, and they'd been rehearsing for a year. And I was just the kind of level of detail and the level of construction and artistry that was within it. I was just really excited by, and as Alex said too, a lot of them are in foreign languages. So you're listening to, you know, things in Hungarian or in Chinese, or, you know, and yeah, I just think it's the kind of breadth of what you're seeing, and the vision, the kind of bigness of these directors' visions, you know, and the level of risk to the projects. It was really exciting.
I wouldn't mind wrapping up this Q&A session for hearing from both of you. You know, there's a bunch of people here who might be interested in applying for the course, and advice that you might share about the course itself, or applying, you know, in general.
Well, I suppose like I came in, I applied for the course having never directed anything, and just had experience as a lighting designer. And I think sort of, you know, that initially, you know, what, you know, I was like, oh, you know, I won't get in. But I think that the important thing that I sort of realized when sort of applying was to sort of come with sort of like a passion and a drive to sort of learn a craft, and not coming with the idea that you already know it all, I suppose. And that's the thing, is like, it's you're kind of basically signing up to be like a sponge for the year, and like taking it all in. But also, you know, it's such an incredible experience to be sort of, you know, locked in a room essentially with 8 other passionate, driven artists for, you know, 15 months. And like, I kind of wish, like you have, you know, the year after you graduate, you're like, oh, I wish I could go back, you know, just, you know, those discussions that you kind of have in trying to unpack what theatre is, and how to kind of, you know, make it better, or how to, you know, how to improve yourself as an artist were so incredible. So yeah, it was such an awesome experience.
Yeah, I would say the same as Alex. Like I equally had never directed anything, and I was really like, I'm not going to get in. Like, why are they going to let me into this course? You know, except that I just loved theatre, and, you know, it was something I'd done a lot as a kid, and had gone to a school that focused on theatre, but I didn't even know if I was a director. Like I didn't even know at the end of the course if I was a director, if I'm completely honest. Like the whole time I was there, I was like, I don't know if I actually can do this. And everything felt new. Like every single experience was something I'd never done before. Like all of a sudden we're doing mask work, and then just even being asked to be a leader in a room, like and to kind of manage a company of people, all of that stuff. It just felt like it was this kind of learning on overdrive. I remember I had this experience where I was standing in the library at the NIDA library, and I looked around, and I'd been to university for 5 years. I'd done like a double degree in something else, and I never had this experience. All of a sudden, I was in maybe month 6 or something of NIDA, and I was standing in the library, and I looked around, and every single book in the library excited me. Like I was like, oh my God, I want to read that book, and that's on design, and there's a book on architecture, and there's a book on dramaturgy, and oh, there's a book on different directing methodologies. And I just was excited by every single book. And I think that's how I felt about all the different things that were thrown at us. Like they were all new, and they were all really exciting. And by the end of the year, it's like only a year, so you're getting enough tools and enough input that what you take away is like, a little bag of tools that you have to then expand on and use and throw away. And but it's a very solid grounding, for people who know what they're doing, and for people who don't know what they're doing, but as Alex said, have like this passion or love for this art form.
Great, thanks for that. I think the important takeaways from both of you there is exactly that in the application process, we're so interested to meet as many people from as many different backgrounds in terms of experience as well, and different perspectives, that you don't necessarily need to have a whole bunch of 10 shows under your belt or anything like that. We're actually looking for that real spark of creativity inside an applicant, and can see their real potential to develop a very, very unique directorial voice to contribute into, the modern and future industries. So I think that might be a good point. Thank you both for that chat, to start to field a couple more questions. I think we've got just about 5 minutes or so to field a couple of questions if you have any. Also, I'll be able to certainly provide my contact if people wanted to follow up with some other follow-up questions and email as well. So if you wouldn't mind just putting, I think there is a function where you can do raising your hand in the chat if you had a question, and then we'll be able to go to you. It could be to me about the course, or it could be, of course, to Alex or Imara as well about their experience of the course. Any questions from anyone there?
I think Adam has a thumbs up.
Oh, hi, Adam. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you on my screen. How are you?
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Hello.
Thank you. I couldn't find our hands up, so I just did a thumbs up.
No, that's great. Thank you.
My question was just about obviously there's very extensive hours that you're committed to on a weekly basis. How did you manage finances and, staying alive with that kind of commitment?
Well, when I did the course, what did I do? Oh yes, I basically sort of every couple of weeks would be doing like shifts at sort of the theaters around town, basically hanging lights. So I kind of it's a kind of a bit of a constant joke over the last few years that I'm basically now using lighting design to fund my directing career. So I kind of basically was working as a lighting crew for sort of the Griffin and Belvoir and sort of other places, was lucky to get sort of shifts that sort of helped to sort of pass the rent every now and then. So that was kind of my main source of income. But it is definitely a challenge, I'll put it that way, and I'd say it's not the sort of course that you can easily sustain like a weeknight job, but it is the type of course that you could sustain a job on a Sunday. Like that's the sort of the ideal thing. So if you can find some sort of job that allows you to make double time on a Sunday, then like tick your set, you know?
Does that start to answer your question, Adam?
Right. No, that's fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Any other questions that we can field for anyone?
Hi, Ben. We just got a question from Sam in the chat.
Hi, Sam.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So thanks so much for your time today. So I had a question for the alumni here. I was wondering what experience you found the most difficult about the course, and also the one moment that you will remember the most, the thing that sticks out to you most.
Wow, those are good questions. Okay, well, I think what I found hardest was stepping into this idea of seeing myself as a leader.
Okay.
I found that quite hard. I didn't really know what it looked like to be a leader, or how I know this sounds ridiculous, but like how to be in a group of people that might have more experience than you, might be older than you, might have different ideas about the work that you're making than you. And I found all of that really challenging. Do you know, I continue to find it challenging now, actually. And so I think negotiating that, like rooms and anxiety and actors' needs and creatives' needs, and yourself being at the top of this tree essentially, and trying to kind of hold a space for everyone, that's really hard. And at night you're thrown into that situation again and again and again and again. I think what I will remember, I actually ended up having like this brain hemorrhage. This is how exciting NIDA was to me. I had this like crazy brain explosion. And I think what I'll remember like from that is it was just before my grad show experience. And I think what I remember is how much the group of people that I went through with kind of carried me through that experience, like literally at my bedside in the hospital, you know, and that's something that, and even now those people still kind of carry me, like, you know, some of those people have become my dearest friends, and also the people that I will call when I'm in the middle of a production and I don't know what to do. I'm just like, I'm terrible at this. I don't know what I'm doing. How do I fix this, you know? And they'll be the people that I'm still calling, do you know? So so yeah, those friendships, those collaborators, you know, that feels very real. Like you went through something together. And you know,
I love that you say that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you go.
Oh yeah, I just love that you say that, like, sometimes you don't know what to do. Like, that's so reassuring to me, because like I'm looking up to you as like a leader right now, and I'm just like, oh, it feels really nice to hear that yeah, sometimes even the experts don't know what to do.
Oh no, I'm not kidding you. 10 years in, I feel like I know less about what to do. Like, what I'm starting to glean is most people are in the same boat. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, now I just hide it.
You learn how to build up a good facade. No, but I think that the hardest thing I found was like the essays. I'm like by no means like a writer or like you know academic for hire. Like, so I think that was the most challenging thing for me, is just you know, you get me on the floor, get me like, you know, making the theater, like fine, love it, but like sitting down and like writing an essay and trying to put like all my thoughts and ideas into like word form, I just found quite challenging, which is why I make theater, not why I write journals. So yeah, I thought that was the most challenging, but you know, it's lucky. The lucky thing is you get to write about interesting things, so I suppose, hey. But I think I agree with Imara. Some of the most memorable moments are those moments where you feel like that, you know, you're in the trenches and there's just been like a ceasefire with, you know, you and your classmates. I just remember being down in Wollongong where we worked on a project, and when I did the course, 3 of us went to Wollongong to work with a bunch of actors at a university down there, and another 3 went to Melbourne to work at a university down there. And I just remember sort of us sitting in our sort of in our hotel room that evening, having wine and cheese, trying to on the Wednesday night, middle of the week, trying to solve each other's sort of development. And that was kind of amazing. You know, one person was developing a physical theatre piece with puppets, another person was doing a piece with live stream video, and I was doing essentially like a clowning piece, and we were all just able to just solve each other's works, and it was just a kind of incredible moment. And I think that's so special, is this moment of really sort of leaning into you know, other people's practices and learning from them as much as you learn about your own, you know.
Right, perfect.
Thank you,
All right,
Sam.
thank you so much.
I think we got time. There's 2 more questions there, and I think that's probably all we have time for. I'm sorry. So I think I can see there's a question from Nick and then Maddie, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Nick.
Hi. I have a question about the application process, in particular the portfolio. I'm just wondering what kind of things are relevant or interesting or useful to include, and maybe if you have examples of things that people do include that are a bit like unuseful or too much.
Yeah, so Nick, in terms of the portfolio, it can honestly be anything that you think kind of supports, whether it's kind of high quality production shots of shows you've done, or very lo-fi iPhone photos of a project that you once did. You know, it's not to do with the kind of quality of what you're showing in that portfolio necessarily. It's more for you to share and give us an indication of what you're interested in, you know. So what projects have you collaborated on before? Which artists really inspire you? And to give a bit of an insight into you as an artist. That's what we're really looking for. It's not necessarily, you know, an overly impressive CV with hundreds of productions we're looking for. We want to know that the passion and the creative ideas are there in the work that you're interested in. So you can show that in whatever way you like as well.
Great.
Portfolio.
So we're happy with like a scrapbook setup.
Absolutely. Whatever is useful for you.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Maddie.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to ask a question to the alumni. If you could go back in time to your first day of NIDA, what is a piece of advice you'd give yourself?
My first day, I was silly, and my first day back at NIDA, so I was on an overnight train from Melbourne. So I literally came from a final dress rehearsal from a show the night before in Melbourne, got on a train at 7 o'clock and arrived in Sydney at 7 a.m. fresh as a daisy for my first day at NIDA, because all the flights were too expensive, so all I could get was a train. So my advice specifically would be, don't do that. No, but I think the other thing is just like a bit to be on a more serious note is, you know, yeah, these you know, the people that you meet on that day will be very much you know, your collaborators for a year. So you know, get used to them.
Hey, Maddie. I think I would say, like, you know, that probably everybody in that building is, I wish I could have told myself that everyone in that building is terrified, and everyone in that building feels like it was kind of a mistake that they got in, do you know? Or at least, like, that's how I felt. And I think I kind of wish that I'd let myself off the hook a little bit and just kind of had been like, you've been chosen to be here for a reason, and this is a place where, you know, universities are a place where you can try things and fail. Like, I know it sounds really trite, but that you can kind of experiment and try things, and those things might not work, and that is great, because that's what the creative process is. You know, I felt like everything I did had to work. And that's not a great way to approach learning, probably.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maddie. We'll just take that one more final question from Sasha.
Hi.
Hi, Sasha. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I was just wondering, as an undergrad, can I go straight to my master's in directing, or do I need to follow another path to get there?
If you have a degree, so if you graduate from your undergraduate degree, whether it's a bachelor or whatever it might be, then that would make you eligible to apply.
Okay. What bachelor or degree would you recommend to get into the master's? Like,
honestly, Sasha, it could be in any field. The idea is that we're looking for people, you know, who might have a little bit of life experience. So we've had people who've come in who have architecture backgrounds, have been professional dancers and then wanted to explore what directing looked like. As Alex described, he started off in technical theatre and lighting design. That ended up being his undergraduate degree. So there actually isn't a specific degree that is more useful than the other. If you've got a real drive for wanting to develop your own practice post a degree that you've already got, then we're really interested to meet you and say good day.
thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Sasha. And thanks very much to Imara and Alex. Thank you so much for your time. So great to just speak to some people who aren't, you know, well, I'm here by myself, so it's good to have company at least to have a bit of a chat. It's also great to have company of everyone who's might be interested in applying for the course. So thank you so much for taking part in today's Zoom session for the MFA directing course. I also want to say that I'm more than happy to continue chatting with people who are interested in applying. So if you wanted to email me at benjamin.nida.edu.au, if you've got any questions about applications, I'm very happy to answer them. And then otherwise, there's a bunch of information on the website, on the directing page on the website as well. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a very safe and happy day. And I look forward to seeing you in the applications and auditions, I hope. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.